I often say venture investing, it is investing, but honestly, I think it's relationship management. There's so many people that I'm talking to, and people are, emotional. People have their ups and downs. And because I'm talking to so many different people on every single day, it can be very jarring.
Hi, baby.
Hi. Hey, y'all. We have an episode today with Jeremey Brown. Jeremey was our very first Power Hour guest. So thank you for trusting and coming on to Power Hour. I had such a great conversation with you.
I love the energy. Like, Jeremey, you are just a beautiful soul and amazing human being. And I really enjoyed the authenticity of this interview.
Yeah, Jeremey, I feel if I had to distill to one word, I would call him magic. He's just got the best energy. And today we really dove into his journey into venture capital. So for those of you looking to enter the space, lots of tidbits here for you. Find Jeremey, kind of get in touch and try and see if you can get a coffee chat with him. He's a very busy man. So he's a partner at Creator Fund, and they look at deep tech investments. He tells us, for instance, if you are a rock star Ph.D. at Oxford or any other fabulous institution, why you should go with them. And he also talks about his journey, right, into VC. So he started out with geophysics and took that all the way through a PhD. And we also chat about Beyonce and lots of other things, such as getting more diversity in the field. So enjoy, y'all.
This was fun. Enjoy.
Cool.
All right. All right. So you were telling about your fun plans last night. So today you woke up tired. What did you do today?
I had a British roast for lunch.
What is that?
It's one of the best things about living in the UK. It's like meat and like horseradish sauce with gravy, and they have cabbage and the bread
Very
that's
nice.
made from like animal meat. I mean, it's so
Wait,
unhealthy.
bread from animal meat?
Like they get the animal fat and they turn it into some type of bread. I don't know.
Wow.
A lot of people, I mean, it's very elaborate, but it's at every pub.
It feels like exactly what you need after a night out. After a wild night out. So that
so good. So good.
Cured you, maybe gave you some more energy.
Yeah. No, it did. It's like I was like, I just want a food coma. So I did it like around 3 p.m. So
amazing.
I was like, okay, make sure the coma is over for the podcast.
I love it. I love it. You're ready. And this brings me to this topic, which I know you love so dearly, is I'll invite you again to Austin. I keep telling you, you got to come
I'm coming.
visit.
Oh, I'm coming.
Because we have this spot called Terry Black's that's like 5-minute walk from us that people just rave about being the best barbecue. And what you just described feels like a Terry Black's vibe. So you got to come out. We got to go out on a Saturday. We got lots of great clubs around here. And then we do a Sunday Terry Black's. Oh
my gosh. I mean, I'll definitely be in the U.S. in December.
Oh, great. Yeah. So perfect. We'll plan it out.
Yeah. And I'm planning summer, like New York next summer as well for Fire Island. So, so whenever I'm in the U.S., I always have to make my rounds anyway. So
yes. And we will come visit you in London. So this morning, I woke up, went and grabbed my usual morning coffee, and I'd been hearing so much about Beyonce's latest album, Renaissance, which I'm so late to the game. But we were wedding planning all year and we've had all these travels. And so that's my excuse. But I listened to it for the first time this morning. She has a song on there that's super fire, classic Beyonce, sassy form.
The cover song.
You told me the cover song.
Break My Soul.
No, that's the one I'm talking about.
That's the one. That is the one you're talking about.
So good.
Oh, yeah. Break My Soul. So that's the one I know because it's on the radio. Everyone's listening to it. I've been to a few dance parties in the summer where it comes on and everyone screams and raves and says, No, it's a great song. I think her whole album, is her coming out with a new album after a while. And then this whole, narrative or story around kind of just, building resilience. I think that's very much Beyonce. So I think she just builds on that about herself and all of her struggles and everyone else's for that matter.
Which is so nice. That's so funny that I didn't realize that that was her cover song. This just shows you how big my rock is that I live under and why I need you and friends more to tell me you gotta listen to this. But I love that that's the one that I fell in love with too. Saying, all right. So Jeremey, we are discussing career tracks. And I just find your path so, so fascinating. Like I personally don't know. And well, again, I don't know that many people that have gone from getting a PhD and then transitioning into venture, and something I'm really curious to learn about from you. So would love to dig into it. And I was thinking maybe we could start from the beginning, kind of what got you interested in even the PhD and why geophysics and why a PhD?
Yeah, I kind of think about that in my life, how that even happened. And I mean, I think it started from growing up in Colorado because I grew up outside of Denver. And, if you've been there, it's one of the most beautiful places I think you could grow up.
We want to move there.
Yeah. Everyone wants to move there. So I'm saying don't move there because then property prices are just going to become like California.
Okay.
So,
We got you.
But everyone does want to move there because it is an amazing place to grow up. And the nature's great and the beauty. So just seeing the mountains every single day, going home from school or, just driving around town. I always had these like questions of like to my mom, like, oh, like, how did this happen? How did this mountain get here? What are these rock formations? And my parents aren't, scientists, so they didn't have the answer to the question. And
They're you just asked too many questions. Go read a book or something.
Yeah, and I was so curious about it. And so, one of the universities in the Denver area, very small engineering school called Colorado School of Mines. I went when I was, I don't know, sometime in high school to one of their prospective student things, and I walked past this geophysics booth. And it was just like, it was kind of love at first sight. I was like, wow, this is literally exactly what I want to study. There was like no hesitation.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like, this is really cool. I have no idea what that means in terms of a career, but I'm just so fascinated. I just want to learn about what this is. And not a lot of schools offer it. So I was like, yeah, what the hell? Like, I'm just going to do it, hope for the best and just learn it. And then, it just took me into this whole bachelor's, master's at Stanford. And I went to Stanford to start my PhD in geophysics because I loved it so much that I was like, I want to keep going.
Let's pause. First of all, I think that's what a beautiful story of you grew up so excited about this, like asking questions about it. And then it sounds like you kind of stumbled onto it at college. I feel like that's so lucky, right? That you ended up going to a school that offered this, but almost a part of me is thinking, kind of makes sense that this engineering school in Colorado offered this program, right? Like as you described the environment with all the mountains and the beautiful nature, but then you had this opportunity that you took and then you enjoyed it, which I think doesn't always happen. What was it about geophysics that you loved so much, and so much so that you wanted to continue and pursue? Because I studied chemical engineering in undergrad, for instance, but I didn't consider doing a master's and a PhD in chemical engineering. So what was it about it for you?
Things were unsolved in my brain, finishing the bachelor's degree. And so I think you get the base understanding of like, the physics of the earth, because that's what geophysics is. But then, something about also like getting into a Stanford PhD program and something that I love just was very, very appealing. And it was funded and it just seemed like it would be a great 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't know what I was getting myself into years to just research and learn. And so I was just like, that's just like a really great opportunity. And, I think the punchline there is pursuing passions, which I think now people are kind of being told to study this or told to study that to have, this type of career. I see why, some people say that, but on the other hand, I think if you just have a passion for something and pursue it, like, with earnest, you'll figure things out along the way. And so if I could go back in time and say that to myself, with starting something with no idea where it would be in 10 or 15 years, that's what I would tell myself, to just chill and like, just pursue the passion and learn.
Damn, Jeremey, I'm getting goosebumps as you say that because it's so obvious that you truly were pursuing your passion. I can picture young Jeremey, excited, wide-eyed, filled with wonder, just really interested to learn. And like you said, you had questions that were unanswered. And I think that's sadly rarer these days. So what great advice. And then I heard you say it was funded. So it sounds like financial aid was something that was also important to you. And sounds like that's something that maybe you were looking for. Was that relatively easier to get in a PhD track? Also, Stanford's an amazing school. So congrats. That's huge. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so at least at Stanford, if you get accepted to a PhD program, you're funded for that PhD, which means your tuition's covered and you receive an annual stipend, a living stipend, which I would say at the time it was enough living in Palo Alto, which is quite expensive, but I never felt like it was not enough, and so I couldn't go and buy a home in San Francisco, of course, but in terms of being able to enjoy,
some millionaires can't go.
Yeah. But making rent, enjoying time with friends, all that was really, really great. I mean, I just want to also say one thing I didn't mention in terms of pursuing the PhD. I think the one thing that was very critical there was my PhD advisor. So, I mean, this individual, Mark Zobak, I think he just fundamentally believed in me. And so,
shout out to Mark.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it too. With passion and pursuing it. But there was definitely, one person in particular that kind of believed in me and guided me through that whole journey, instrumental in that. So if I didn't have that, for example, I don't know how much the passion would have, taken me without someone sort of, lifting or pushing you, to really succeed or, achieve, said goal. And so, I think it was a combination of both when I think about it.
That's beautiful. I feel like it always comes down to just hard work, lots of hard work on your part, obviously, but then also these elements that you're mentioning, someone believing in you, pulling you up, Stanford giving you a shot, like your undergraduate school giving you a shot, you being curious. It's almost like you have this perfect mix of chemicals in this box that you shake up that produce magic, the magic that you are.
Yeah. Or, could explode, but that's okay too.
Or it could explode, but that's great.
No. Yeah, you get some roadblocks along the way. That's all right.
It's all good. All right. So then you made it to Stanford and you were pursuing your PhD. How did that translate into your interest in the MBA program and then eventually venture capital?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's this, story for me of like cognitive dissonance to the extreme.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I loved research. I loved my PhD program, just digging into a problem and becoming an expert in it. But on the other hand, it never fully satisfied me in terms of, my personality, so to speak. So, sitting in a lab or on the computer, building a model, it's a very slow process research. Takes years to develop your thesis and your dissertation. Yeah. And so, I'm a very kind of, fast moving person.
I know.
I kind of just like, do. And so it just wasn't like doing it for me in that sense. Really, really loved it. It was a great time in life. But when you look at and take MBTI, I'm like as strong of an E as you can like think of. I'm very, very extroverted. And, the research world doesn't necessarily translate into that level of extrovertedness or extrovert nature that I have about myself or personality. So I was like, okay, after my PhD, I moved to the Netherlands and I worked in product for a while. And that was like a really great time because I was more involved with teamwork. We were building really cool software products. I got more of a day-to-day interaction that was not just myself, which oftentimes with a PhD it is. And I just realized, I was like, this is really cool, but it was also quite niche, and that was by nature of doing a PhD. You do kind of pigeonhole yourself into a field. Yeah. So if you're not really excited about that field and think you will be for a very long time, I think at some point I was like, well, maybe I went too far. And how do I think about like backtracking?
How do I rein it back?
And broaden my scope about the world. And that's how I thought, the MBA just led me there. Because it's like, well, I get to hang out with very fun, extroverted, ambitious people that just have an opinion about everything about the world, for 2 years. And then it just sets you up to explore. Stanford USP is a great place where you can reflect on yourself. You can develop tools to become more an effective leader, to enhance that EQ, to really sort of think about how, people are perceiving you versus you should be interacting with other people. A side of myself that hadn't really had an opportunity to develop, I would say, over the course of my career so far. And that was the motivation for doing it.
So I just want to say, because this is how I met you, right? At Stanford Business School, Graduate School of Business. I would have never guessed in 1,000 years that you had been a PhD student. You were just so fun, so you were like sparkles, you know what I mean?
Just running around with a high top, this guy just like running around dancing.
Yeah, you're like dance, but you always had this big smile on your face. You had this beautiful laugh and just so kind and warm and happy. And not that I don't think PhD students are happy, but I would expect, you were just not what I expected. And so this was kind of my first impression of you. It was like, whoa, really? But getting back to what you were just describing, you decided to move to the Netherlands. And like I said, you lived in 7+ countries. I don't even know if you can keep track of how many places you've lived in. So you were working and then why did you decide Netherlands? Were you interested in exploring different places? Was it something about the geography there? Was it something specific to the research you were doing? How did that happen?
Oh yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think I kind of glossed over it, but I also didn't mention that I did my exchange. I had an opportunity during my bachelor's in my senior year to do an exchange semester in the Netherlands at TU Delft, and so that was my first time of being on the ground in that country, and I fell in love with it, just the culture and the people, and so when I had an opportunity to pick between the Netherlands and moving to Houston for this role outside of my PhD. I was like, I want to live in the Netherlands. I want to move back there. It's familiar enough. Also, I'm just a very global person. I think I resonate the most with people that just have a very global view about the world and aren't very narrow in kind of their culture. And so for me, it's always been like the intent to like build a global career in whatever way that meant.
Why do you think that is? Yeah. Why is that something that's important to you?
I mean, my mom says to me, my first word was plane. I don't know if that's true. But
that's cool.
So I mean, maybe that's the simple answer. I was just like born to do it.
Born to fly, baby.
But it's literally, I think, it's the real. Because it's just, I don't know, people and cultures just fascinate me, and I loved growing up in the U.S. But I think even in the U.S., you can have a very strong sort of U.S. dominant culture, American dominant culture in terms of way of thinking, in terms of even like way of communicating, which is great. I love the U.S., but having that different perspectives has just like enabled me to grow and also enabled me to, I think, connect with people a lot easier than maybe other people can.
Yeah. I want to bring up, Jeremy, you are a Black gay man. When you say about culture and the openness to culture, I find you're one of the most open people that I know. And I'm curious, do you feel like that influenced you at all in terms of this global perspective and wanting to learn so much about other people?
100%. Yeah. I think being kind of, dual minority or double minority.
Hey, me too.
Yeah. It's it's kind of you're always, I think, very self-aware that to really make strides or to succeed, people I think are going to be having the microscope on you. And if you make a mistake, it's more accentuated, or it's like, I knew that was going to be the case. Where so I think in that case it was kind of just being. I always told myself when I was kind of always taught to go the extra mile in terms of. Building, a career or presence in this world that's kind of unmatched. And so, with this PhD and this MBA and this global, mindset, having the opportunity to live in a lot of different countries, that's just enabled me then, at this point being, in my mid 30s, to have a platform that no one can disagree with, or that no one can really, or not a platform to educate others and be inspiring to others, but a sort of an accomplishment level where no one can tell me otherwise, that you can't do this or you can't do that, because time and time again, I've been able to demonstrate that I can. So I think my entire life to date has been trying to, and still in the process of doing, get to a point that that I can really, stand on my own 2 feet, and don't have to put up with the BS that the world sometimes throws at you.
It's funny because I think of you as one of the most accomplished people, and it's fascinating how much you have to go through or deal with the boxes that people or the world may want to put you in. And I think you're such a great example of how that's not the case. All right. So back to the Netherlands, and sounds like you wanted to have more breadth. So you thought about business school. How was that for you? And how did that translate into your excitement about venture capital?
Business school was overwhelming.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah,
It was a blur.
It's a huge blur, to be honest. Fortunately, at Stanford Business School, it's 2 years. A lot of European business schools are 1. I can't imagine doing a business school degree in 10 months.
No.
So fortunately, you have 2 years. The first year, I was just so overwhelmed because I thought I was extrovert until I went to business school. That's what I tell people sometimes. Just like, so much people, so many small group dinners. You're trying to get to know 400 people in a very, very short amount of time. And so I think it was socially exhausting. It was mentally exhausting. But then, looking back, it was just kind of this really exceptional time in life where you just build, lifelong friendships as well as a network and a community that's just very, very, very supportive. So, I mean, business school was intense. It was intense in a way that I didn't think it would be intense. And while I was there, I was trying to, think about what caters to all my interests. So my love of, science and engineering, but, my love of people and being very people oriented. That was a conversation I was always having with myself is, if I'm going to have a career that I'm going to like and really, really enjoy, it has to kind of merge, these things. And that's where I stumbled on venture. I had known about it before, but I didn't really know. I thought it was like inaccessible.
Yeah. Why did you think it was inaccessible?
Because I didn't have the background for it.
Okay.
I think, being a Ph.D., I didn't know anything about business or investing. I knew it was always really appealing. I thought always that would be a really cool career, but, maybe I don't have the background or experience, or even would have no idea how to do it or what I would be doing and
how to get started.
Who would hire me. Yeah. So I think the MBA just, really set me up well for that. Being in Silicon Valley, a lot of people coming out of the business school end up in venture or worked in venture before going to business school. So there's just a lot of people you could just speak to and get their perspectives.
What was cool about it for you? You mentioned this always seemed like a cool career. What was so enticing about it to you?
So, what I'm doing now, we invest in deep tech, which is essentially any type of company that needs a co-founder that has some type of science or engineering expertise. And so what that means for me is I'm talking to, scientists and engineers that are looking to commercialize, really cool technology or build really cool products that, are going to fundamentally change the world, from the hard science perspective or from the artificial intelligence ML perspective, like applications that are going to digitize, said industry. And so that's kind of caters to my science side. And then, venture capital, it's just, you're talking to a lot of people, you're assessing a lot of different companies, you're building, this pattern recognition across markets, across, so many different things. And to do that, you're just talking to a lot of people. And, stakeholder management is very important on the fund side, but then also, really assessing founders and the merits of, a company, if it should be, backed with capital, from our fund. And so I often say, and I didn't realize this until having been a venture investor for some time, I joke that venture investing, because it's early stage. So early stage, less about like in private equity, the financial model. It's more so about the product, technology, and who's building that. That's day in and day out, what I'm thinking about when I'm talking to a company. I often say venture investing, it is investing, but honestly, I think it's relationship management. There's so many people that I'm talking to, and people are, emotional. People have their ups and downs, and because I'm talking to so many different people on every single day, it can be very jarring. And you come in, contact with so many different personality types and what have you. And so I think for me, what I love about venture and how I stumbled on it, what I thought it would be more or less is, it's very much a relationship business. Then because we invest in deep technology startups, I just get to nerd out on really cool science and engineering trends.
Wow, that feels like such a great fit for you, Jeremy. Not only are you looking at the science behind companies, but even more so, you're building really. So I love people, and I know how much you love people too, and just talking to people and getting to know them. And you just told us how big of an extrovert you are. And this feels like such a perfect match for you. Again, I feel like it's really hard to find what it is that you love so much. And I think that's very fortunate for you. And so it sounds like how did you come across this fund? Would you say all VCs are similar for people that are looking to get into venture? How can someone figure out their path?
Yeah, I think part of it was luck and part of it was positioning myself for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so on one hand, you'll hear people say, and I'll give my very strong opinion on this. You'll hear people say, there are multiple paths into venture capital, which is very true. Mm-hmm. There's really leading journalists that, eventually pivoted into it. People that were, working at the White House and eventually became VCs, neuroscientists. So that's very, very true. I do think there's a huge hurdle when you look at the breakdown, like in the US, of the VC industry, who went to a Stanford or Harvard versus not, or a top institution. It's still very, very dominated by a few institutions. And so not to say that it's not possible, 100% it is, but the way it's shaped up now, people just like to hire something they're familiar with. And so I think for me, it was part maybe luck, but also, being and having the opportunity to have been accepted to Stanford for business school, I think really positioned me the strongest of any of those maybe things, luck versus not, to like set myself up to break into the industry. I think there was definitely be other ways that I could have done that. And there's so many different ways into venture, but I think just by the sheer network that I had access to, that was an enabling factor for me to, get my feet wet. And so when I oftentimes get messages from people like on LinkedIn and say, how do I break into venture? Like young people.
Yeah.
And I say, you can go the, high growth startup route, because that's very, very great for early stage investing to have that experience. But I often say, look into top tier business schools, because I think the amount of network there, but also what you learn in terms of being an effective venture investor, I think is really great. I think it's still, I don't like how the industry looks in terms of where people, come from. And so that's, a barrier I hope to break down in my career in the future as I, continue my career in the venture world. But I do think it's still a really strong avenue in which to break in.
I was just thinking, as you were saying, it breaks my heart a little bit. Rings of this boys club or whatever, like girls club now, or Ivy League club or whatnot. And what are ways that we can all give folks more opportunity? Because I didn't come from a background that was of that sort. I was given a chance, an opportunity like you were to get into Stanford, but we all know that there's a ton of luck there too. And another scenario, I wouldn't have gotten accepted and had access to this network, which we're both so grateful for. So I love hearing.
I think that's less talked about. So I think within those communities, there's a lot of effort making sure there's more representation in venture, like for women, for minorities, for LGBTQ, people that identify as such. But they're all coming still from like kind of the same institutions. So I think on one hand, there's a lot of strides being made in terms of how do we diversify this industry in one way or in a few ways. We want more representation, and I think that's great. But it's not full representation in terms of how does, an African-American female at, the University of Illinois break into venture. That's a different hurdle, and I think is like less talked about.
In hiring, we can look out for minorities and underrepresented people. And to your point, there's so much more work to be done there. And it starts with acknowledging and identifying that this is something that needs to be worked on. All right. So specifically, how did you get to Creator Fund where you're at today?
Yeah. So I would say, I think the moral of the story that I'm about to tell is, always when you meet people in life, you never know where that relationship leads you. And that's how I ended up at Creator Fund, to be honest. So after business school, I had an opportunity to work at a venture fund / accelerator in Silicon Valley for about 8 or 9 months. and me being kind of very globally minded and a Europhile, self-proclaimed Europhile. I love everything about Europe and the people.
I love that. I'm a Europhile too then.
Yeah. Just the people, the culture. It's just so much, the food, and
the food is so good.
It's like always like looking at what opportunity would be to, move back abroad. And very much so, a gentleman that graduated from Stanford Business School, probably 10 to 15 years before I did, was a mentor in many ways, would give me, advice about, venture and just career. And this individual was in the process of helping to set up a fund in Berlin. And so with those conversations I was having with him, one day I just said like, actually, I'm quite interested. Once you bring on someone more junior, I would love to, be considered for that. I've been looking to move, back to Berlin, and doing what you do, pre-COVID, I was like thinking I'm just going to jump on a plane and try to meet him to like really sort of put forth the seriousness of this. Yeah. And then that was probably in December, and I started working at that fund in May. Wow. And so it was from that connection and just that relationship and having built that over, several, months that enabled me to move back abroad, to continue my journey in the venture world. And then one of our classmates, who's named Jeremey McFarland, shout out to Jeremey. He started Creator Fund, 3 years back. And what's really funny is we weren't that close at business school. We had a few interactions. I remember close to the time of graduating from business school, we were in the back of an Uber, and he was telling me about his plans of setting up this fund. And I I was listening, and I didn't really think anything of it. Like I was like, that's cool, but I didn't really think anything of it. That 5 years later, I'd be working alongside him as a partner in the fund. And so what's really funny is, and what's even funnier about this story is, I had that interaction, and about 2 years later, when I was in Berlin, I was flying to London for a business trip. It was really early in the morning. It was like 7:30 a.m. I was walking to check into my hotel, and I see Jeremey on the street. He's like walking and ready to cross the street.
What are you doing here?
And I'm like, hey, and I look on his shirt, and he had like this pen that said, Jeremey McFarland for MP or something. And I was like, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to one of my rallies. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I'm ready to be an MP. I was like, what? I was like, what is going on right now? I was like, what is going on?
Am I dreaming? What's happening?
It was like great to run into you randomly on the street.
On
going
your
to
rally.
your rally. Yeah, I was like, okay, good luck. Then, you didn't win the seat, and he's still, building Creator Fund. Fortunately for me, because when he was hiring for an investment partner, earlier this year, I reached out and said, I'm actually quite interested. And he said, it'd be great to work together. And, it's very much into building and scaling mode with the fund, which I think is very, very exciting because I love building. And it's, we're building, but more so on the fund side, which I think was just really exciting. And then having the opportunity to move over to London as well, too, which is a city I've always loved. It kind of just checked so many boxes for me.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. So, Rishi Sunak, who was just in the running, he's a GSB alum as well. So I love all these GSB alums. I hope we'll have the Prime Minister of the UK one day soon. And good for us that Jeremey lost that seat and is still building Creator Fund, but we'll still support his political ambitions for the future.
100%.
Okay. So you're here, and we've obviously caught up a bit on how it's going, and I'm so excited for you both. But one of the things that really stood out to me in kind of how you work together is you mentioned, and like working together is challenging, right? This is your partner, you're working together every day. Obviously, conflicts come up. And I just love what you mentioned to me about how you have sessions where you go over with each other what worked well, what didn't work well. Tell me about kind of some of the things that you think are important in building a successful relationship with a co-founder or a partner.
One of the courses, a signature course at Stanford Business School, everyone calls it touchy-feely. It's actually called interpersonal dynamics. I guess it's an experiential course, but it really helps you think about how do I engage with other people without, offending them or making them defensive, but making sure my thoughts and my sensitivities are communicated or understood. So you do, the entire course, like really sort of having these touchy-feely like sessions that can get emotional, but, I think on the other hand, it helps you sort of grow and better understand how to, deal with conflict and communicate with people in a more effective way. And so that's what we've instituted at our fund. We have, they're, more or less informal, but, him and I can have touchy-feely sessions. We have it with our central team together as a group in London, as well as even with our more junior colleagues, our analysts and student investment partners. We have something that we call Q15s, where at any point, if anyone wants to have the 15-minute chat about frustration or a problem or wants to communicate feedback, they can do it. And they just say, I want to have a Q15 with you. And so it's really nurturing this openness of a culture where no one should ever feel like they're not being heard, or if they do have a problem with something that someone said or did, it's an open platform of communication where they don't feel like they will be silenced. And so I think on all three of those fronts, me and him having our individual one, the group one with our central team, as well as with the broader organization, it just really has this nice feeling that, if there's a problem or, if I did something that maybe I didn't realize I did that maybe offended someone or what have you, someone will tell me. It's also kind of, I hate touchy-feely in the sense that before having that talk, on my heart beating like, oh no, what's gonna be
so
said?
Nervous.
Did I do something
wrong?
What
did I do?
Yeah. But then after that, the whole point is to have it, and then you kind of just make up and hug at the end, and you move on with your life. So I think with that, I think it builds just a really strong partnership, and also just culture of an organization that I think just promotes just healthy growth if it's institutionalized very well.
No, I'm so impressed with that, because to this exact point, right before these sessions, regardless of how practiced you are, I feel like I at least am always nervous. Muchin and I have these, and even if we've had the best week ever, I'm always like, oh, maybe I did something that I didn't realize that hit you the wrong way, that now you're upset about, that you like, but you always are nervous. But I always feel like after these sessions, you always just feel closer to the person. I think it's about the communication and the trust and vulnerability and sharing. And I think it's really important to practice that. It doesn't come very naturally, I don't think, to most folks. And it's really impressive that you've been able to institute that in your culture. Speaking of which, tell us a little bit about the fund.
Sure. So deep tech, which I explained a little bit what that means before. I mean, it's quite broad.
Okay, what does it mean? What is deep? It's one of these phrases that everyone's excited about now, like AI or virtual reality. So what exactly is deep tech?
Yeah.
What makes it deep?
There's a science or engineering, co-founder expertise, usually at the Ph.D. level. So someone Ph.D. in AI from University College London, or, did a Ph.D. in, let's say, genomics. So it's taking some fundamental, understanding that most people don't have and building a company to solve a problem that the world needs addressing. So for us, that's anything in, life sciences or health tech or med tech that can go into the climate tech arena, that can go into like industrial tech or, advanced manufacturing, that can go into, infrastructure sort of type of applications. Like you said, anything around sort of artificial intelligence or machine learning applications for any sort of industry, or anything around sort of the next, evolution of natural language processing. All that's within scope. And so even to a lesser degree, Web3 and creator economy, but we do see some deals there that would be relevant, and we could maybe make a case that it is deep tech, depending on, what's type of product is being built. And so that's kind of high level. And a lot of that, unsurprisingly, it's being born out of university innovation. So it's going to be PhDs finishing their degrees saying, I've been studying this for years. I see this huge pain point in the market. I'm going to build this company to address this. Or postdocs, or to a lesser extent, even sometimes professors thinking about leaving their posts to build and commercialize, their research or their expertise, with the company. So for us, that's how, the fund is set up to invest in these companies being born out of university innovation. And so because of that, we're structured in a different way than most VC funds. So we have our main central team in London, which is myself, Jeremey, and also our director of operations and our chairman. And then we have what we call student investment partners or student analysts. So see, these are current PhD students in most cases. We also have a few master's and bachelor degree students at the analyst level that are still doing their degrees, but on a part-time basis, they're embedded, at this point in time across 28 university campuses in the UK. So Oxford, Edinburgh, Nottingham, Queen's University in Belfast, everywhere you can think of, we have that coverage. And they're sourcing companies, in their local ecosystem. But then, if it's a relevant deal that we're looking at, like, let's say, I don't know anything about biotech. So if we're looking at a deal in, like, I don't know, in bio, I'm going to call up one of our PhDs that's doing a PhD in virology or something, whatever the deal, needs. And, he or she will really be able to run that technical diligence and say, actually, there's really something here. We should be taking this seriously. And, and then at the central team, we're more so evaluating it for its commercial and merits and venture backability. It's a really nice setup. We're taking that right now, which is, 20 portfolio companies in in the UK, and expanding and growing into Europe as we speak. So putting people on the ground and having a presence across, probably by the end of this year, 5 to 7 new sort of deep tech hubs on the continent, I think is really, really exciting, just to continue to drive kind of that model, but also, build up kind of that more geographic, footprint.
First of all, that's very exciting. If you're expanding to about 7 hubs, that's wild. You guys must be very, very busy. But also, I love what you mentioned kind of about the PhDs or the students that are studying this technology at the institutions that you use to help you with your deep dives. And my understanding is this is not very common in the industry. I think you guys are treating them as more partners as opposed to just scouts. That's also fascinating. How did that come about? How has that model been going for you guys?
Yeah, so it's originally based off of the U.S. Dorm Room Fund in the U.S. But we're quite different because the U.S. Dorm Room Fund invests in bachelor degree students building a new consumer app.
And this is deep tech.
And this is more deep tech focused on PhDs. So it's a different take on the model, but it's very much started based on kind of that broader model that was in the U.S., which was brought to Europe with more of a PhD deep tech focus. So, to date, we just closed Fund 2 earlier this year, back in April. So
Congrats.
It's really exciting. So I think that validates, the model in the sense that you're able to, have your second fund set up, starting to deploy the capital. It's still too early to tell because venture is a very, very long game. So we still have a lot more investments to make, 3 years in. So, you still start realizing exits usually until year 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. And so, it's still very much, time to really validate that thesis, but there's data points that say, there's really something here. And so I think that's very exciting.
What's the size of this fund? This is Fund 2?
Yeah.
And
Fund
the
2
size and what are your check sizes that you're writing?
Oh yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I was started to talk so much. It was like,
this is great.
Fund 2 is a little over 20 million US dollars.
Amazing.
And we're writing checks between 150,000 pounds sterling to about 600 pounds sterling.
Oh, wow.
600,000
And are you guys
sterling.
first check in?
Yeah. So typically if we're investing at the pre-seed, we like to be the first institutional fund and like to lead the round. And then we'll probably syndicate with, an angel or a few angels. If we do a seed stage deal, because we also invest seed, typically based on the round dynamics, we wouldn't lead. We could maybe lead depending how much the company is raising, or co-lead, but also happy to syndicate, with a really strong fund or, an angel syndicate, et cetera. So we have a combination of leading rounds and non-leading rounds, and invest pre-seed, seed.
Awesome. And then let's say I'm the most impressive PhD student you've come across at Oxford. And I'm working on some really exciting technology. Maybe I'm solving the cure for cancer. Why should I go with Creator Fund?
That's a very good question because we're awesome. No,
that's true.
So I think it's a lot of different things. Number one, the network. So, we have at any given time, 35 to 40 PhDs, masters working with us. And then these, individuals are with us 2 to 3 years, and then they go on and become great investors or academics or, building their own companies. And so we have this huge alumni base and current cohort that, this individual can draw on in terms of, sounding board, in terms of thinking about how do I start a company, or thinking about, how should I deal or interact with an investor. They can tap into that network. Oftentimes, too, our cohort of students, many of them, I think it's close to 50%, if not over 50%, end up landing in one of our portfolio companies or getting placed. And so from a talent acquisition standpoint, for, companies that do become our portfolio companies, we can really help drive, key talent placement for them, because we've worked with these individuals, they're obviously very smart and capable and have really good experience on the venture side, but also, on the science and then technology side as well. So that's really, really big. And then I would say between Jeremey and myself, we have a lot of experience in building strong syndicates with top tier investors. So having worked in venture myself in Silicon Valley and in Berlin and London, and Jeremey in Silicon Valley and in London, I mean, we have that network to really, set this company up for success in terms of the signaling that the venture world lives and thrives off of, in terms of having this investor lead you around or having this angel on your cap table. We're very much in our capacity to make that happen as well, too. So I would say, from a creator, and we're growing and scaling. So I think just from a brand recognition standpoint, if you get the creator fund investment coming out of Oxford, that does say something, because we're very, diligent in our diligence. And so we don't obviously invest in every company, and we only invest in companies that we think are going to be the next, decacorn. The combination of all those different things, it's a very appealing, proposition.
And you're also quite unique in your thesis. I don't think are there other VCs that have this thesis?
Right. I would say not at the scale that we do in Europe.
Yeah. So I think you're specialized and obviously really care about the work that you're doing and the impact. In terms of teams, what are some of the attributes of the strongest teams you've invested in? Let's say I am looking for funding, working on deep tech. What makes a great team in your experience, pattern recognition wise?
Yeah, I think the best teams are the ones that are hungry. And so what I've noticed between the US and Europe is, if you're in Palo Alto and running around and talking to someone wanting to build a company, like, this person is convinced they're going to change the world with what they're building, and they're not going to settle for anything less. And I think that ambition level is a bit muted in Europe, in the sense that, in Palo Alto, everyone wants to build a unicorn. I think in Europe, a lot of European founders are happy to exit at, maybe 40 million, which is great. For anyone that's able to exit for that is great. For a venture investor, that's not so great, because, we're in the business of driving returns for the fund and returning that money back to our investors. But I think the level of appetite is a bit different. And so I think the best founders that I've seen, on both sides of the pond, are ones that are hungry, that really want to, day in and day out, just build this company. Even if they have an opportunity to exit early, they say no, because I should be the one really executing on this vision, and I'm going to take it all the way. But then also people that are coachable. So, if you're an arrogant founder, I don't think personally that you'll go very far, because there's a lot that you learn. Even if you're a serial entrepreneur, there's always something that you need to learn from someone else. And so, having that level of coachability alongside that ambition, I think, is very, very important. And I think because we invest in deep tech and very much PhDs, I think the EQ has never been something that they really focus on in their career. And so for me, the trifecta is then that person having that selling ability, being able to pitch their company and get me just bought in and say, wow, this is going to be the next, Apple. And so I think if you can really, have that ambition level, that Silicon Valley ambition level, being able to be in constant growth mindset, as well as, I think being able to just really effectively sell and pitch what you're building, your idea. That's like the best founders that I've come across, and that do exceptionally well.
So this makes me think of something which I believe Europe is behind the US when it comes to number of unicorns, or even startups that are coming out of universities, right? We have Facebook, we have Snapchat, many others that aren't coming to mind right now. Whereas I think maybe Europe is behind the US. I bring this up to say, with this ambition, you have European founders are exiting at maybe 40 million. Do you feel like that's an education thing? Do you feel like European founders or university students just need to learn more about this? Are you taking part in that education, or is it a couple other factors that you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think it's a combination of a few things. So, at Stanford, because Stanford has just had wild success in building or spinning out great companies, as a student there, you have inspiration. You have someone to look to. You're like, if they did it, I can do it too. And I think that can't be understated. And so, a lot of European universities just don't have that in terms of an alumni base, or, current students, they don't have that, alum that they can, hit up for a coffee and say, you inspire me. And so I think that's a function of just, ecosystem and building those network effects over time, which I would argue that's happening in the UK, like around Cambridge, for example, at an accelerated rate. So I think that's one thing. I also just, I think the US is much more of a homogenous market and big market. And so when you're in it, you kind of just think bigger. Whereas I think if you're in a smaller market, it's not that you don't think big, but it's kind of, limited by the market that you're selling into as well too. And so I think then it's kind of just that mindset of, okay, maybe I will initially build the company here, but then how do I
gotta expand,
internationalize and grow this to so I think it's also kind of like that, mental kind of as well too.
Right.
And then I think it's just, the appetite, I think, is just maybe just different. I think for Americans, we're very capitalist, and we're like, we're going to make a lot of money. And I think in Europe, that's not so much the case. It's
more about the culture.
Yeah, the culture and
the things we love
having,
as Europhiles.
Preserving like a really nice way of life. So I think that plays into it as well too a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I'm eager to watch that ecosystem evolve. I love having this conversation with you. Hopefully some founders at universities can get inspired to dream bigger and can hit you up for a coffee or a chat and learn more. And I'm sure this will continue to progress in future. The other things you mentioned, coachability, totally agree about how important that is. It's like we're all works in progress, and you never know everything, and it's about being open to that learning and growth. And then the last thing feels a bit harder for me to pinpoint, like this ability to sell. We have people like Steve Jobs that can probably sell a pen to me with 20 pens already where I don't need a pen. So what have you seen? How can someone learn that or practice the sales aspect of being this sparkly person who can sell you anything?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. I think it comes down to the act of storytelling. So I'm a big fan of getting a founder in front of, someone, or even, myself in some cases, is how do you craft a really good story? And a lot of it is, thinking about how do I build this narrative around my company and why it needs to exist in the world and why I'm the person, or we are the people to do it. And so I think I don't think of it in terms of selling the idea. I think it's more so the craft or the art of building a story around, why you're doing it and why you should do it. So I know that's a kind of a very ambiguous maybe type of answer.
No, but that makes sense.
Without getting into details, but that's, I think, number one. And then, I think number two, because I have given presentations around selling your idea. And I think a lot of times people underestimate kind of the power of irrefutability. And I think the best, founders aren't necessarily jumping in saying, this is the problem we need to solve. They actually say, I see this in the world happening. I see this in the world happening. I see this in the world happening. You're like, oh, okay, I can't really refute that. Yeah, therefore I have this really cool product. Actually, and then, me as the customer says, I actually need that, because everything you've just said is irrefutable. And why am I not doing it? When, my competitor down the street clearly is, and you're informing me about this. So I think that's the other aspect in terms of sort of the framing of such. But then also, I think a lot of it is in how you speak and how you communicate and how you make eye contact with people and how you undulate your voice and how you think about your body movements. And a lot of that, I think, can be learned through coaching if it's not, natural to someone. And I'm a big fan of coaches in this way, especially if the person is just not used to doing it or doesn't care to. Because I think the art of just people interaction is very, very important. And that's something I love doing. I just love interacting with people. And so I think,
know.
So just like, it's like anything that can be done to like, enable someone to do that more effectively. Is you're just selling. If you sell yourself, you're going to be able to sell your company.
Yeah.
And people are buying into you.
Yeah, because you not only need to raise money to be able to build your product, but you also need to convince people to go get on this mission and journey with you, where it's not all sunshine and roses and butterflies. There are going to be hard days when you're grinding. That's the typical day of a startup. And it's about convincing those people and not convincing them in a way that's manipulative, but just like getting them on board with, hey, this is why it's worth it. And this is why it's worth waking up every day on this journey together. And then finally, to your point, showing the world why this product matters and why it's different and why they should use it. So yeah, that makes sense. All right. And then your favorite parts about working here today, I know, are how you really enjoy building. Before we transition out, I wanted to really tangibly get a sense of what is your day-to-day.
Yeah, it's quite loaded, which I really, really love. So I'll talk to a handful of startups that are promising, that our team thinks we should really be moving on in terms of diligence. Be running, with my colleagues, diligence on maybe one or two companies at a time, which means evaluating kind of the market opportunity and how they're positioning their product in the market and the defensibility of that product. And, how well is the team executing? Is this team really the team to be executing on this idea and this vision? So at any given time, we're evaluating a few deals for investment. And then further, I guess, up the pipeline, it's initial calls with founders to see if it's a company that we should be moving. So that's part of it. We have 20 portfolio companies. So at any given time, we'll have a portfolio company raising their next round, or there is some type of crisis that needs to be dealt with. And so, part of the day during the week is engaging with the portfolio companies that I'm managing or looking after. Like, for example, one of our portfolio companies is just kicking off a Series A raise tomorrow. A big part of my week will be working with that team on, that effective, raise strategy, as well as investor introductions, et cetera. And then at Creator Fund, we have 71 LPs. And so, Jamie in particular is, making sure, our LPs are happy. We are constantly, emailing them, making sure that they're engaged and know what we're up to. So that's a big part of it. And then just being a fund manager, which maybe isn't as fun of the job as compliance related stuff and all these things at the admin. And I think, especially at the partner level, that's something I underestimated, but that can take quite a bit of time up during the week, depending on what's trying to get done. And then I would say also, I always try to think outside of the deal making, which is we're a fund. We have to be investing. That's the number one thing. Our portfolio needs to succeed. So I'm always probably doing something with respect to portfolio during the day. And then it's always thinking about kind of the frivels. So the marketing, the content strategy, partnership strategy, these are things that I'll try to spend a little time on during the day. And if I don't get to it like on a particular day, definitely during the week to sort of build, that Creator Fund brand going forward. So yeah, it's quite dynamic, mixed, talking to a lot of people, and then obviously there's like a lot of internal meetings with the team to make sure we're all on the same page with respect to companies we're looking at, or, and also recruiting and mentorship. So because we're working with 35 to 40 PhDs, a lot of, not a lot, but a big part of my time, probably a quarter of my time during the week is, making sure that they're learning how to be an effective venture investor, that they are, getting their questions or concerns answered. So that's part of my job as well, too.
I love what you mentioned about mentorship, that you're still taking the time to give back and train and support others for the people that are looking to break in. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit. Sounds like network is important. You mentioned building that for folks that don't necessarily have access to their network, being more of a go-getter, building those relationships, proving yourself, showing the hard work and diligence. What's a piece of advice that you've heard a lot of in terms of breaking into venture that's completely wrong?
Oh man. I mean, I've heard that going into banking first, coming out of undergrad, and then going into like private equity, and then from private equity going into, I just think that's a crazy route into venture. And I actually don't think it's the strongest profile in the sense of, if you did do it, that's great. But I think having more experience on the product side or building company side or something where you're intimately familiar. And goes for early stage investing, not necessarily growth stage or growth equity. For early stage investing, I think is more valuable. And so people that, I think anyone that says, you have to do this and this and this to break into venture is the exact opposite. It's the most opaque industry, inefficient industry on the planet, I think. And a lot of it's just like talking to people, networking, showing your value, your interests. I've sourced these companies. I think you should be investing in this company for X, Y, and Z reasons. Or, I built this CRM tool to better manage your startups or your deal flow. Like, there's so many different ways to show value to a fund that I think that's actually more appealing than maybe just this very traditional path, which there's not so many venture investing roles. And so going that traditional path, there's no guarantee of success. I think really take a little bit more ownership around sort of getting into front of specific people and individuals and building that network, I think is a more valuable and more, I guess, and not an easier way, because it is tough regardless, but it makes more sense, I guess, in terms of maybe breaking in.
I imagine it also differentiates you, right? Because if so many people have this particular background, you stand out in the crowd. If you are able to come to a VC fund or partner and show, hey, I can help your startups in this way, or I was able to, by showing this initiative, get access to these types of deals, or I've developed this type of pattern recognition, and here's my track record or whatnot. What you did with the partner in Berlin, where you just flew out and you told them, hey, I'm really interested, I'd love to be considered, and obviously the hard work that you put in. Excited to watch you guys progress with Creator Fund. In closing, Jeremey, I wanted to ask you a question. What matters most to you and why?
Oh, yeah, that's a really great question. I haven't thought about that question since my MBA application. It's great. And it definitely has evolved. I would say what matters to me most and why now is, and we're all older now, right? I think our position and our standing in the world and what we can give back has changed as well too with age and with career progression. So I think what matters to me most and why is, I think making sure that I play a pivotal role in the future of our society in a positive way. And so for me, that's investing in really great founders and companies, but then also I think kind of going back to this, helping, the younger generation, which I find very inspiring. To feel like they can change the world, that they can have, a pivotal, piece in making sure that in 2100, we're all not, living in the Arctic because we can't live anywhere else or something like this. And so, so I think that's what matters to me most. I think it's kind of this combination of having my part in enabling the future, but then also making sure that the people that will be around when I'm not around, to feel like that they can be inspired in some way, and aren't cut out of an opportunity because they look a certain way or talk a certain way or come from a certain place. And so I think that resonates with me a lot now.
That's so beautiful. That resonates with me too. All right, my dear, this was amazing to have you.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing.
I really enjoyed being here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, we'll have you back anytime.
Okay, I'm excited. Anytime, give me a call. You know where to find me.